Good morning. I'm going to continue talking about the chant that we do in the morning, the identity of relative and absolute. This is the second part. And the lines I'm going to talk about today are the subtle source is clear and bright. The tributary streams flow through the darkness. To be attached to things is illusion. To encounter the absolute is not yet enlightenment. And as I mentioned last time, the identity of relative and absolute, which is called the Sandokai in Japanese, was written by Sekito Kisen in the 8th century in China. And he's a Dharma grandson of the sixth ancestor, Huineng. And this Sandokai is part of the Soto Zen liturgy, and it's chanted in Soto Zen temples as regularly as the Heart Sutra is. And we chanted it every day at Zen Center Los Angeles, where I trained. So these lines that I just read, I've heard it said that they're the core of the Sandokai. So to realize the subtle source is a major challenge we encounter in our practice. And synonyms for the subtle source are the absolute, or the true self, or Buddha nature, or big mind, or sometimes the single word mu. And whatever your mind can conceive of is not the subtle source. We have a koan called What's the Source of Mu? And to realize the source is like exploring a deep cave with a stream flowing in it, and we keep going deeper to find the source. And whatever we find, we need to determine what's the source of that. What's the source of our opinions? What's the source of our beliefs? What's the source of our belief that I'm an independent, autonomous being? And taking all that together, what is its source? And how far can we go? So as soon as you think you found it, there must be a source for that. So a monk asked Joshu, everything comes from the one. What does the one come from? I remember wondering something like that when I was a kid in religious school, where they said that God created everything. And I wondered who created God, And it's an innocent question of a child, but adults are afraid to ask it, because it's blasphemy. And I did ask it. I don't remember the answer I got, though, but it wasn't very satisfying. That's all I know. Maybe you asked that question. Did any of you ask that question? Yeah. What were you told?
God is love is what I was told.
God
is love is what I was told.
God is what?
Love.
Love.
Yeah,
love.
That's the Presbyterian.
Oh, okay. God is love. Must be yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, I grew up in a Jewish tradition, and God wasn't always love. Yeah. So the tributary streams or branching streams refer to the phenomenal world. Thus, these two lines describe what is from two perspectives, the subtle source and the tributary streams. So in the 100th case of the Book of Equanimity, a monk asked Kaku Osho of Roya, if the original state is clean and pure, then why suddenly do mountains, rivers, and the great earth arise? See? It says the subtle source is clear and bright. So why do all these things arise? I had a friend who was a physicist who was a very deep thinker, and he said, he sees he doesn't understand why anything exists, why anything arises. And that's the question here. If everything, the original state is clean and pure, why do all these things arise? And Kaku replied, if the original state is clean and pure, then why suddenly do the mountains, rivers, and great earth arise? So he repeated the question of the monk, except didn't repeat it as a question, he repeated it as a statement. He said the original state is clean and pure, and suddenly mountains, rivers, and the great earth arise. So in Zen, we say that's mounting the bandit's horse to chase the bandit. That's that kind of an answer. So in the mouth of the monks, it was a question. In the mouth of Roya, it was an exclamation. So both are true. The original source is clean and pure, the original state, and all of these phenomena arise. So what's the problem? What's the problem with a monk? The problem is that when difficult or uncomfortable situations or feelings arise, we think they're not pure. The truth is they're neither pure nor unpure. They just are. But we interpret them in a way that fits into our worldview. If it doesn't fit into our worldview, then it's impure. But the basic problem is that one's worldview is not pure. It's impure. It's based on false assumptions. And the fundamental assumption is that we're independent, autonomous, unique self, and we need to protect and aggrandize it at all costs. And we're willing to maintain that worldview, even at the expense of our happiness, our well-being, our health, our sanity, and our peace. We'd rather criticize someone else to maintain our worldview than to open our heart and include them in it. So if we think that we're a good person or a bad person, unworthy or superior, we believe it. But in the world of the subtle source or branching streams, no creature ever fails to completely cover the ground. So thoughts can be transmitted by other thoughts, but the living reality cannot be transmitted by thoughts. So the subtle source is clear and bright because it cannot be defiled. In the phenomenal world, we say that something is defiled, but in the absolute sense, things are just as they are. They can't be defiled. The vast sky cannot be defiled by the clouds, the storms, pollution, or birds. Only in the sphere of dualism can we talk about something being stained or something being wrong. So I think in the Bible, one of the most provocative stories tells us how a good man named Job became an unwitting pawn in a contest between God and Satan. Satan wagers that he can break Job with a dose of suffering, while God knows Job's integrity can survive whatever test Satan administers. So God gave Satan the power to test Job. He put everything Job owned under Satan's power. And Job's family was attacked by a group called the Sabians that killed his serpents and stole his donkeys and oxen. And lightning struck and killed all his sheep and shepherds. And then another group, the Chaldean raiders, killed more servants and took all the camels. And the storm blew down his oldest son's house and killed all his children. This all happened in one day. And Job tore his clothes in grief. And he said, I was born with nothing and I will die with nothing. The Lord give, and now he has taken away. May his name be praised. It's in Job chapter 21. So Satan wasn't exactly winning the bet at this point. So he then requests the power to hurt Job physically, claiming that this kind of suffering will cause Job to curse God to his face. So God allows the devil to hurt Job, but not to kill him. And now Job is inflicted with boils and sores from head to toe. And his wife, Mrs. Job, told him, why don't you curse God and die? While he doesn't curse God and thereby win the bet for Satan, Job does plenty of yelling, mostly at God, in effect daring God to show up and explain why his world is turned upside down and is so unjust. So the Lord does show up and basically asks Job, who do you think you are? So it's a lesson in the sovereignty of God. So we can't question or understand God's motives when Job is reprimanded for doubting God's justice. Like the subtle source, we can't question it. It's just what is. So someone was talking about this chapter in the Bible, and they said the problem is that Job took the whole thing personally. You know? So some of us may suffer like Job, and that's our problem as well. We take it personally. If you get attacked and injured or killed by a mountain lion, the mountain lion doesn't ask if you recited your prayers that morning. He doesn't ask if you love your children or your spouse. He doesn't ask if you owe any debts. Futai's sister is suffering from cancer, but the cancer doesn't have any ulterior motive. It's just doing what cancer cells do. The subtle source is clear and bright, and there's nothing personal in it. We may suffer, we may excessively, we may rejoice excessively, and conditions change. They're always changing. But we all know where we're going to end up. So sometimes in Zen literature, the roles of light and dark are not consistent. So it seems in this case as if the dark is relative, the tributary streams flow through the dark. But sometimes the absolute is depicted as a dark cave where no distinctions can be made. But these streams are flowing through the dark. And you know what that means is that all phenomena are informed by the absolute. In other words, in the Heart Sutra, we chant, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. So everything we see, everything we think, every object we have, it only exists by virtue of its opposite, and it doesn't exist on its own. In other words, good doesn't mean anything without bad. Up doesn't mean anything without down. So at its basis, everything is empty of any fixed meaning. So the subtle source flows through the dark means all phenomena are empty. Everything is empty, and we have to realize that. So when we practice, we see the emptiness of self. There is no self. That's what the Buddha said, there's no self. But we also see the emptiness of others. That only when the conditions arise do phenomena arise. And the conditions, are always so complex. But these tributary streams are like a water cycle. The water flows to the ocean and then evaporates, and then it rains and returns to the streams. And all of our perspiration and other body waste enter the cycle. And this line about the tributary streams is also an allusion to the lineage, the Zen lineage, which is not separate from us. All of the teachers in that stream, bringing it to this moment. And it also shows that we're not separate from the ebb and flow of energy in the world. Now, the next two lines, as you see, are pretty clear. To be attached to things is illusion. And it's a fundamental illusion, attachment. It could be the source of all delusion. It's whatever we're attached to. We chanted in Shishin and we chant in the morning here, the affirming faith in heart mind, and it starts out, the perfect way is not difficult as long as we don't pick and choose. I'd prefer as long as we're not attached to our choices, to our picking and choosing. So if we're not attached, we can just enjoy things as they are. So anything that we're attached to is delusion. And they can include our ideas and thoughts and our feelings and everything you hold dear, your worldview, your fundamental beliefs, your hidden beliefs, your unspoken truths, your habits. So the primordial or the fundamental illusion is not seeing that the relative world of phenomena is no other than the absolute, the subtle source. But the next line criticizes sticking to the absolute, saying that to see the absolute is not yet enlightenment. Why is that? Because if we get stuck in the absolute, to say, well, that's it, that's everything, that defines everything, that's what we call a Zen sickness. It's seeing the emptiness of all things as the beginning of our practice. So we have to integrate that insight into our life. And what prevents us from doing it is what we call our habit-ridden consciousness. We have all these habits. So I think it was Hakun who said that pre-Satori or awakening practice is easy. Post-Satori practice is difficult. And why is it difficult? Because we have all of these ingrained habit patterns that we developed over a whole lifetime, and how do we deal with them? All of our knee-jerk reactions to everything. We have to examine everything and see where we're stuck, why we're behaving in certain ways, what's the subtle source in these conditions. So to see that things are empty, including the notion of the absolute, is a primary emphasis of this verse, the Sandokai. And we'll talk about other parts of it, later on. So that's what I've prepared. I could go on, but why don't I stop and let's see if you have any comments or if it stimulated anything in you.